Hello everyone. So there's been some talk about how Windows can work as a tablet PC. So let me just show you today about how I use my Windows tablet PC. So here I have the Asus T101MT. So it's a convertible tablet PC, but we'll be looking at it using in the slate form. And now the first question that a lot of people ask is, how can Windows be a usable tablet device if it takes like half a minute to turn on? Well, the question that I would like to ask them back is, why are you turning it off in the first place? Just stand by. And for new machines, the restore from sleep is pretty fast. And if for some reason your hardware can't resume from sleep properly, or blue screens on resume, well, check your drivers and make sure they are up to date. Now, the other thing that people usually talk about when they say that Windows makes a poor tablet system is that the interface elements are very poor. They are too small to be handled. Well, that can all be tweaked. As you can see here, my Windows elements for maximizing and for the control buttons are already resized. You can see the same with the scroll bar. So instead of being made for the mouse, you can actually reconfigure them to be more accurate for finger touching. And it's actually very easy to do. All you have to do is just enter the personalize, hit Windows color, advanced appearance settings, and this dinky little box comes up. This is just a holdover from the old Windows days, and you can just change the size of the active title bar or the scroll bars to something that you want. Now, and some of you might have already noticed, there's a little mouse thing that follows my touches. That's one of the enhancements that I've enabled on the control panel. Now, this is to use for small little areas like this. Even though I can still hit them pretty well, if I wanted to, for certain elements, I can just drag this thing around, drag this virtual mouse around, and use it as if it's a mouse on its own. So even though they are small elements, I don't have to constantly combat myself to try and click on them. So I can have a virtual mouse to interact with extremely small elements on programs that aren't meant for touch. Okay. Now, the other thing that people have been saying is the keyboard. The recent HP Slate video has shown that the keyboard needs to be invoked by a button on the device. That's actually just a choice of the OEM developer. For example, on my system, on a typical Windows system that's touch enabled, you can actually either touch it at the side of the screen and bring it up, or you can dock a little button on your taskbar so that tapping on it brings up the screen. And there it goes. Or if you just tap on the text box area, the taskbar will come up. Now, some of you might be complaining that, oh, the touch pointer is getting in the way. Okay, you can see when I tap on the text bar, the touch pointer gets in the way. That's why it's a personal preference whether or not you want to enable this little touch pointer thing. A lot of people don't. Personally, I find it useful. That's why I keep it enabled. Now, this hover keyboard will always come out. The icon for the hover keyboard always comes out whenever you hit anything that accepts text input, and is telling Windows that it is accepting text input. So I think it works everywhere. And then the keyboard itself will adapt to depending on what kind of fields it sees. For example, if I am, let's say I'm in Notepad, if I'm Notepad, you can see that the keyboard is a pretty standard keyboard. But when I highlight the IE address bar, you can see that some additional shortcuts comes out. So let's just go somewhere. Okay, just head over to my website. Now the panning experience is a very interesting thing, because on a PC, most browsers aren't equipped to be panned, because like most PC applications, they always expect that there's a presence of keyboard and mouse, so they don't expect to be panned in this way. So if some are supported, for example, if your browser does support it, for example, IE has internal understanding of Windows Touch, so it can scroll pretty much standard out of the box. But if we use Chrome, you need to install certain plugins in order to enable that touch panning capability. And of course, okay, it's still loading. From my experience with this plugin, if it's loading, it doesn't really work that well. And just stop the loading here. Okay. So for the IE itself, you have the built-in pan gesture, but for other browsers, not so much support. But there are a lot of plugins for both Chrome and Firefox that you can get that enables grab and pan gestures. Let's close that. Okay. Now, sometimes you will notice that when you're trying to pan a document, it doesn't work. So you still have to pan it using the normal slide scroller bar. Most of the times it's because of the way the web developer might have wrote the page. For example, let's see, I have a Twitter box here. Now this inside here, for the web developers out there, this is an internal scrolling window. So you can see when I drag the thing, it also scrolls inside the window itself. So for some reason, if you start dragging on an element with scroll on, but it doesn't actually scroll, IE basically tries to scroll that internal element, and you can't hold on to it, it doesn't go anywhere. But of course, you can still revert back to the original scroll bar if you want to. So it's just something that you need to be aware of if you're using your touch gestures to control your Internet Explorer. An interesting side note about this is that, about the scrolling issue, is that if we look at how Safari chooses to implement that, here we have an element with internal scrolling. But if you look on the iPod, iPod Touch here, you can see that the internal scroll bar doesn't appear, and you basically can't scroll inside the element. But I have seen on certain sites, instead of having a scroll bar, what happens is that it expands fully to encapsulate all the elements. So your mileage may vary there. It all depends on how the website actually works.